Hello, Bible study. Marianne said she was doing a study of Enoch and she'd asked me if I had any materials that she could include. And I thought of something related, and I thought it might be something interesting to include. And I figured it's easy enough to just make a video that she could play for y'all. I've heard a lot about y'all. So hopefully you'll see how this ties into the theme of the book of Enoch and also the end times. So here we go. So when I think of the book of Enoch, I feel like the significance of it is how it details the watchers and talks about the unholy watchers being the fallen ones and all the evil things they taught mankind. And so from my studies, I felt like that those were the pantheon of gods who governed the earth, badly, obviously, and were worshipped before the flood and after that. And we know that God clearly had a huge problem with that because his first commandment was, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And because he said that, he literally means that there are other gods below him, obviously, but ones that he created. And those would be the watchers. The unholy watchers, as we know, created the Nephilim by leaving their first estate and mating with human women, which is why God destroyed the earth with the flood in the days of Noah. And how that ties into the end times, which I believe we're in now, making it even more relevant, is that Jesus said in the end times that it would be like the days of Noah, and that is one of the signs that we're approaching the end. And I'm sure there's different ways that these times are like the days of Noah, but I feel like one of those is that the fallen angels and the Nephilim spirit will return. And maybe they would physically return, but definitely spiritually they will return, and I think we do see that now already. So that's the sign Jesus talked about that I want to focus on for this little video, and those ancient specific gods returning, or at least their spirit returning to the earth to mingle with mankind. And I'm going to focus on one main person for this example, and that's the reason you see this disturbing image here on your screen. And this person, I think, is personifying, mimicking, channeling, whatever you want to call it, some very specific ancient Nephilim type gods. And she's a very high profile person that's currently being promoted. And that person is this pop artist known as Grimes, this girl. I'm going to pull up a different picture of her now. She always depicts herself this way, in this kind of fairy type, and here you can see her painting a dragon, which is coming off the page. She's an artist. Supposedly she does her own album artwork and writes her own lyrics and things like that. She's the supposed girlfriend and supposed baby mama of Elon Musk's supposed children. And I say supposed because we know deception is another sign of the times. But at least this is the way that she's portrayed in the media, as his woman, the mother of his children. And so that makes her a female that we want to look at. For one, because of her association with Elon and her promotion as a pop artist, and also her very specific strangeness, or evilness in this case. So touching on Elon, we all know who that is. He supposedly founded and owns all these companies that have progressive technologies, and yet they vary wildly in their scope, their technology, but they all do somehow fit into the New World Order Great Agenda, Great Reset Agenda. So he's got SpaceX with his Dragon rockets, his Starlink satellites blanketing the Earth, Neuralink, brain interfaces, Tesla. He did have PayPal. He has a company called the Boring Company, which is a tunnel boring machine, big giant one. And then, of course, Twitter. But I think what's off about Elon being the founder and owner of all these companies is that it just doesn't make sense that one man could and would head all of this up. I mean, the technologies, the scopes of these companies vary so wildly. But yet their commonality is the agenda behind him. behind them. So I know that he's lauded, as this rich genius guy, but I would just argue that he's a character created for a narrative. An actor in a play that's being written and directed by someone else, like the New World Order. He's a figurehead, very front-facing figurehead for all these different things that are coming out. So enough about him. I just want to point out that because of his affiliation with Grimes, I think, excuse me, is significant. So let's look at this woman, this one that's being portrayed as his girlfriend and baby mama, the AI mother goddess pop star, who basically, she promotes and presents herself as a fallen angel. But a very specific type, a witchy, elven type, always. And in fact, she even had plastic surgery to give herself elf ears and was looking into vampire teeth caps. Here she is, again with her vampire teeth and her black wings and all that. But specifically, usually she's like this fairy type, elven fairy, which leans into a lot of mythology. That's something we're going to talk about in that lore, which is very specific. Here she's always, got her little devilish looking fairy self and all this AI stuff, and that's what she looks like in real life. And I think this is the best image I could find that depicts her as that type of elven, fairy, ring lord, vampiress type person. And in fact, it's so specific and obscure that she would have had to be studying that lore very intently, or having been given the archetype by others, who knew about it. Or perhaps even be in communication with the spirit of these entities. And so it's not just her looks, but also the tattoos she has, her supposed babies' names, and God knows what else. But let's look at this. So this type is an ancient type of being that a person would have to be familiar with ancient lore and history to actually grasp this. And that would be the Scythian Aryans, or the Tuatha De Danann, who settled in Scotland and Wales. And these were royal Scythians that were referred to as fairies, dragons, vampires, elves. I'm just going to be reading from a bit of history that I had researched about that. So in Wales, they were known as the House of Dan, which is interesting, and it's biblical. And they're also associated throughout Europe as Druids, because that was their so-called religion. And these Scythian Danann were, in Europe, they were a race, like a ruling caste, which they descended from original gods, which we would call Nephilim as Christians. And there's historical evidence that supports that their relationship was also to these Gothic vampires. The etymological origin of the word vampire or overlord is a derivation of the word witch or opier. So vampire, opier, which were overlords. And vampires were individuals, but also families, who used their practice to achieve certain things and fulfill certain social obligations since the Scythian Celtic period of the High Dragon Kings. And they were equated with rank and position as leaders and overseers. So that's very important. These things weren't just things in the woods or things of regular people. They were actually lords with power over others. So when you talk about the Scythians, we're talking about this vampire, which is also an opier, which is a witch, and they belonged by genetic inheritance to a royal caste, Scythian Celtic society. They were priest kings, priestess queens, Princess Druids who had evolved early on in human social history and who belonged to this European and Eurasian wide, hereditary priestly community that originated in the Scythian Aryans. And that name Scythian was used throughout, even in 16th century England. And from the tribal name, it came from the word scythe, which is that curved bladed sword and agricultural tool. So there's a lot of things tied into this race of people. So I know it gets confusing, but these were basically ethereal godlike beings that were worshipped, and they were vampire fairy elves associated with the religions in Europe at that time, up to the Middle Ages, an elven class. So if you look into this lore and history, these entities, these royal Scythians, were legendary all over Europe, from Russia into Romania, Transylvania, and all the way into Western Europe and into Ireland and Britain. They're also known as Tartarians. And I'm going to show you a little article on Wikipedia of a write-up about these creatures, which they call as myth, but they're actually taken seriously, obviously, by some folks. And this is going to show you they're actually kind of the ones that were in The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. This is what you can see. They're light-skinned, glowy goddess and god type, and the men were kind of warrior type, and they had the elven ears. And Tolkien actually took his, writing from that same lore, which we'll see actually has some basis in reality, like most so-called mythological creatures do. And so here's just a Wikipedia about the Tuatha De Danann, and I want to just show this, what they looked like. They were, light-skinned with the red hair, the blonde hair, light eyes, depicted kind of attractively and kind of, glowy. You see she's got the glowing thing, but look at this little snake thing, dude, on this lady's hair. And when you're looking at that, I then also want to show you, this is Grimes at the Met Gala, and you can't see it really well here, but her hair was specifically done very specifically like that same hairdo, which was this little snaky type thing that you can't see it very well, but it goes up and out. And it's just very specific, so I thought that was interesting. And she's always depicting herself that way in one way or the other. So here's, I'm going to show you, is her YouTube channel. And if you notice her thumbnail right here, oops, her thumbnail, look at how it is. It's this fairy with wings, and then she's got some little horns right there too. But what's super interesting about her choice here with this is that it's almost the exact to this one here from the Quest of the Ring Lord book by Gardner. And he is a well-known druid who was really into all this stuff. Kind of like the Brits. And you see here, it's almost the same kind of image, the same feel with this little fairy with her little wings. And this is the magic of the Grail crest. Again, it's that, Holy Grail, British, Celtic lore thing. And you see they've got their little rosy cross here. And she obviously very kind of is modeling her self and her images and her branding kind of after that, or at least that feel. So we've established then that is the look that she's going for, definitely. But aside from that, her character is just crazy and disturbing. Um, in high school, she told her classmates she was the devil. She walked down the stairs in a back bend. At high school, she became a druggie and lived in a broken down houseboat for a time. She had said that she had drank blood before because someone asked her that specifically in an interview. And yet they promote her all around. She was a judge on one of those American Got Talent or one of those goofy shows. And they especially promote her to these edgy teen Gen Xers. And I want you to look at all these magazines she's on, which is really disturbing that they do that with this age group. But I mean, she's been on a lot of magazine covers. Here she is with her little vampirist stuff. But I mean, a lot. She's been on a lot of magazine covers. She's being promoted. The other thing too is she's got all these tattoos all over, and they're really weird and evil and telling. And the Picts, they were also from ancient times, and they were named based on their tattoos, named from a picture or painted like a Pict or a pixie, which meant painted, and it's also related to a fairy. But let's just take a look at her tattoos. She's got a lot of weird tattoos. She's got a lot on her hand. She's got upside down crosses. Just very disturbing stuff. And for some reason, I cannot find... Oh, let me look here. I'll show you this one of her back. It's alien scratches. Just really, strange. Also. And then here's her latest one. Of her whole entire leg. Crazy. Red, looks like blood or something. And notice that right here you can't really read it, this black writing right here. But it's the letters spell in Greek F-A-E, which is Greek for fairy. And she did that one herself. Okay, so now let's go into some of her art and her music, her supposed art and music, where she writes her own lyrics, creates her own album art. And I want you to look at this because this is some really not, it's not good. It's very crazy. It's very demonic. It's, and art is supposedly just like what's inside of you coming out. So if that's the case, and she actually drew this stuff, I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. It's bad. So there's that. It's sick stuff. And so I wanted to click off that. Talk about her songs. So here are some of the names of her songs. Flesh Without Blood, Kill versus Maim, Violence, My Name is Dark, So Heavy I Fell Through the Earth, and Genesis. So let's look specifically at some of these lyrics of a couple of the songs. And this one's called Shinigami Eyes, where she says, I like making friends with demons. You need special eyes to see them. Have you got on your Shinigami eyes? And are you ready to die? And apparently Shinigami is some kind of Japanese demon or something from back in the day. This next one is the one that's the most disturbing, in my opinion, because it's about AI, and you know how you know, Musk is always saying, oh, well, AI, but it's evil and we got to be careful and it's unleashing the demon, as if he doesn't like that. But then apparently she doesn't agree with him because she wrote these lyrics here, which I'll read through, and it says, we appreciate power, over and over, and it says, what will it take to make you capitulate? Simulation, give me something good. God's creation is so misunderstood. Pray to the divinity, the keeper of the key. One day everyone will believe. She still wants you to capitulate and cooperate. And then it says, some people like to say we're insane, but AI will reward us when it rains. Pledge allegiance to the world's most powerful computer. Pledge allegiance to a computer. Simulation is the future. And what will it take to make you capitulate? And if you long to never die, baby, plug in, upload your mind. Come on, you're not even alive if you're not backed up on a drive. And if you long to never die, baby, plug in, upload your mind. Come on, you're not even alive if you're not backed up on a drive. And what's it going to take to make you capitulate? And then, when will the state agree to cooperate? Wow. And she says, Neanderthal to human being, evolution killed the gene. Biology is superficial, intelligence is artificial. And then she wants you to submit. So that's not good. That's just not good at all. And then regarding this elf fairy theme, we have her children's names. So it's not just the way she's dressing and what she's doing in her videos and album art, but she literally, apparently named her children in that theme. And these are very strange names, but they also incorporate this old Celtic elf spelling stuff. And so we have her son, and he's named XAEA12, which she pronounces XAI, Archangel, or X for short. And then her daughter, who's via surrogate, supposedly, is Exodark Sidril Musk, with the elven spelling of Sidril. So we can take a look at this. So see, she's saying here that she's given this elven spelling to her son. And I wanted to show you what it looks like, because it's this A attached to the E, and it's very Celtic, so it's just very specific. And maybe towards the top. To find it. Here it is. XAEA12. That's an elven spelling. It's just weird. So as we can see, she has this whole Scythian ring lord vampire fairy image going, which dates way back into the time of the Scythian Tartarian dragon lord Nephilim. And they had a druidic religion, and they were very overlord-ish. Which, oddly, that isn't too far off from the current royals in Britain, who also have this as part of their history and their legends. I mean, you have them in Druidry, and Charles with his boasting of being descended from Vlad Dracul. And interestingly, there's this town in Old Province in Transylvania named Tartaria, which they've dated artifacts back to before the Sumerian times and all the way back to the Anunnaki. And even though these royals, I mean, they don't have wings and dark tattoos and all, but if you understand occult symbolism, you can see that it's definitely related, and it all ties in together. So it's fallen angel stuff. There's no doubt about that. So we just have to be really careful and watchful, because, I mean, we have a king of a quarter of the world all up in all this stuff. We have Elon with his brain chips and satellites everywhere, and his vampire woman. And, well, you know, they plaster these people all over the media, all over the world, you know. The royals are always being shoved up in the media, having Netflix stuff made about them. Elon's always shoved up in the media, and then of course she's all over magazines and all this kind of stuff. So it's the end times. So just be safe, y'all. Thanks. Bye.